Welcome to the Jeffers Brief, only on Contra Radio Network.
John.
Hold on.
Okay.
Welcome, Intelligentsia. Back to the Jeffers Brief. I'm John Jeffers, your host here on the Contra Radio Network. My guest today is David Kershner, noted author. And I've got him. Now, if you don't remember, for you longtime listeners, I had Dave on the show 5 years ago in 2016. I got this email from Dave. Said, hey, do you mind if I come on the show again? I said, hey, dude, you know what? I told you to come on back anytime you want. The office still stands today. So it took us like a week or so to get the schedules meshed up. Now, if you don't know who Dave is, he currently resides as a senior consultant for a large global Canadian IT firm. Resides in the Midwest with his wife and 2 children. He's a good family man. Dave was born into a military family, and he's the third of 4 sons. In other words, he got his ass kicked by his older brothers just because he was an obnoxious little prick. He was raised in the Southeast and spent much of his childhood in small towns, hills, and woods of Northern Virginia, a good place, and Southern North Carolina. His previous works include the 5-part book series, Foreign and Domestic series, and as well as 3 nonfiction books. And I think, you know what, for you preppers out there, you're going to want to listen to this. Now, Dave is currently working with a narrator to bring his fictional series to life via the spoken word. That sounds exciting. We're going to talk about that too. Now, audio versions are currently available for When Rome Stumbles, Hannibal's at the Gates, and By Dawn's Early Light, parts 4 and 5, Colder Weather, and A Time for Reckoning. And slated for release in the summer or fall of 2021, which is coming up very quickly. I want to welcome to the show Dave. Welcome, my friend. I'm glad you're back. Thank you for coming on again.
Yeah, John, it's good to be back.
Hey, man.
I've been busy.
It appears so, young man. It appears so. You know, for you preppers out there, now Dave wrote a book called
Preparing to Prepare.
Right, Preparing to Prepare, a general guide to self-sufficiency and preparedness. Now, Dave, how long ago was that book published?
Last month.
Last month, so it's current, up to date. Go out there and get it. You can get it on Amazon, correct? Is there anywhere else they can get it?
No, I try to obey my Amazon overlords. So, in order to keep my royalty percentages where I want them to be, I can't sell them anywhere else.
Oh, really? Okay. No, that's good to know.
But I've been known to do book giveaways and stuff like that. So, you know, if I get contacted and they're like, hey, man, I really like this, or I enjoyed meeting you, or whatever, you know, I can go into Amazon, I can buy a quote-unquote author copy for, you know, half price, and then I'll just ship it to you.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't do that to you, my friends. Now, hey, guys, now there's some other books for you preppers out there. One is called Home Remedies, poultices, salves, and tinctures. I would suggest, if you're a good prepper, you have this book in your reference library. Would you agree with that, David?
Oh, absolutely. Of course.
Of course you would. And then we have Just a Small Gathering, Volume 1. What is that about?
Just a small. That was okay. So that was the first book that I wrote with a friend of mine who is a restaurateur, and it actually is what started the Foreign and Domestic series, because I was learning so much about the global food chain and processed foods and things of that nature. So we wrote that because I got laid off during the housing crunch in early 2009. So that was 12 years ago. 12 years ago this month I got laid off.
Don't worry, it will reoccur again.
Oh, I know. It's coming. You can feel it. I can feel it.
Yeah.
But what happened was I started taking some cooking classes.
Yeah.
And through the local community, you can take all these different classes and stuff, and you can take gardening and left-handed underwater basket weaving and crap like that. And,
right.
And I was like, you know what, I like cooking, so let's do cooking. And he and I hit it off. And he didn't have his restaurants up and running. He was actually he had gotten out of the restaurant business because he was raising his children, and he wanted to be home and see them, but that's not conducive to owning and running restaurants. So he actually was a HR manager for a while, because once you become a head chef, you start owning restaurants. You're not cooking, you're doing a lot of HR stuff. So it was a seamless transition for him. But we got this idea to put together this cookbook of sorts to kind of take the fear out of people's thought processes when it came to entertaining small groups of family and friends, and how to cook a better meal. And, we're not talking about throwing a bowl of chips on a coffee table. We're talking coq au vin and peppered steak with a pork cherry glaze, and,
wow,
fun stuff.
Serious cooking.
Linzer torts and
of course
wine pairings and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Who doesn't like a good lizard tort? I mean, really. Exactly.
You need a portable little torch so you can make your creme brulee and stuff like that.
That would seem to be necessary. Now we're talking.
So that precipitated the book series, because I was learning so much about food, and so that's why part 1 of the book series is I Crashed Big Ag.
Good. It's funny, because back in August, I started catching wind that the food suppliers, the processors, have been ordering extra because they were under the impression that all the storms and weather we had over the summer, that it had wiped out millions of acres of crops, and they're looking at probably another shortage again. Did you hear anything about that?
Here and there, but it was pretty spotty, so I never really got a good, clear picture of what exactly was going on. I knew that, like, the meat processors, which is that's a conglomerate, man. Those guys, they do everything they can to squeeze out the little guys, the big ones anyway. But they were having COVID problems, so they were running at quarter or half capacity. So we were having meat shortages everywhere.
Right.
Prices were going through the roof. But when it came to the crops, I mean, we had a lot of bad storms, but I don't recall much about that. What else did you hear about that?
Just that. It was like, I think in Iowa they lost over 1 million acres, and that was from that what they call the derecho that came, and we caught that here in Illinois. It was a brutal wind storm with rain. It might as well just been a tornado for all intents and purposes. It really should have been.
Yeah.
And it just wiped out farms right and left, crops, the storage bins, everything.
It was a Derico. I call them Dericos. You call them Dericho or Derito. I don't know. We had a Derico come through my location in 2007. And it was that storm that kind of amped up my preparedness. And actually, I write about it in Preparing to Prepare. Because I was caught so unaware, and I thought I was pretty well squared away, because I'm saving up to buy some land, and right now I'm kind of stuck in a suburban nightmare. But it is what it is. I do what I have to do for my family, and this is where they wanted to live. So, but this Derico came through. We didn't have power for over a week. So happened that all of my gas cylinders were empty. We didn't have a gas range. I had a gas hot water heater, so we were able to shower, but we couldn't do any laundry. So we were doing laundry in the bathtub. The kids were 4 and 6, I think, at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, so I'm teaching the kids basically primitive cooking skills. I got out a tripod camp grate, one of those deals you hang over the fire, and you can also hang your lantern on and stuff.
Yeah, I got one of those for my RV. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I clipped in the cooking grate, and I put that over top of my fire pit, and I cooked dinners on that. And we boiled water and made pasta and warmed up sauces. I was cooking all kinds, and I have have an old 2-burner Coleman stove, like a camp stove deal.
Right, right.
It was my father's. It's older than I am. And I pulled that thing out of my storage bin, and I filled it up with fuel, and the red can that has like the 10-inch long spout that kind of fits in between the burners. Right. Yeah, you pump it up, and that thing lit right up, and we were making coffee and we were off to the races. But I couldn't use my grill. I had no gas cylinders. I did not beat the horde of locusts that went and stripped everything out of every gas station that had power. Yep. Or a backup generator. And I didn't have decent, viable fire making capabilities. A lot of my stash had been exhausted over the summer and the previous winter on various hunting trips, and I hadn't restocked, and this Derico came through and just knocked me on my ass, and I was like, never again. Right. I'll never do that again. And that's, I had always had a preparedness bent from just being in Boy Scouts and living in rural Northern Virginia and rural North Carolina, and so we were always doing all kinds of crazy stuff in the woods and trying to do stuff with our Boy Scout manual and what have you. But that Derico came through, and I was like, nope, never again. So now I have my wife is just beside herself because we have a little storage shed on our property, and I've always got 4 spare propane cylinders for my grill, and we have a gas fire pit for like winter time, fall, whatever, before it gets brutally cold here. So I have one for that, and with COVID during the summer, we actually had the forethought to buy one of those patio heaters, those 8-foot tall deals. Yeah, yeah. So because her parents are my parents have long since passed, but her parents are still kicking. They're divorced and they're both remarried, so we kind of cycle them through. But the patio heater was a great little saving grace that allowed them to kind of get out of the house safely and not be around a lot of people. And, so I've got the gas fire pit going, and I've got the gas patio heater going, and, and I'm cooking on the grill, and the whole time I'm just smiling because I know I got 4 or 5 spare tanks in the shed. I'm like, I don't care, whatever, never catching me unawares, and, just doing dumb stuff like when we're doing laundry. Yeah. I started hanging a little gift bag next to the dryer. So every time I clean out the lint trap, I just stuff the extra lint in that little gift bag. Yep. And then when the gift bag is full, I shove it all into a Ziploc bag and I stick it in my storage bins. And I'm like, nope, I'll always have a way to start fire. And I'm always trying to find better ways to do it. I can do it the primitive way. I've got all kinds of like Zippos laying around and big stick lighters, and I've got matches, I've got magnesium and all kinds of strikers. I'm like, nope, never again, never again. All kinds of different ways to catch water and purify water, and I'm like, not going to do it.
Here's a tip for you little preppers out there. When you get that dryer lint, the cardboard cores for toilet paper and paper towels, stuff the lint in those cardboard tubes. Then you use it. There you go. You get a gold star. Now, hey, preppers and patriots, listen, I may be a bit of a smart ass, but I can with Dave. But I want you guys to know something. Listen to this man. He's lived it. He had to learn literally on the run, which sucks. But now he's learned, 1 is none, 2 is 1. That's what he's learned that lesson apparently.
And 8 is better.
8, the more the better. Absolutely agreed. Absolutely. Let me ask you this: you had your refrigerator running on electric, I take it?
Yeah, we did.
The storm comes down, electric goes out.
Yep.
What did you do with your stuff in the refrigerator?
Depending on what it was. So some stuff went to friends and neighbors that had more room in their refrigerators and stuff. We had a small little generator, and again, it caught us unawares. So for us, when a derecho comes through, it's basically a latent hurricane. All of the weather that's associated with it, precipitation, thunderstorms, what have you, that wasn't present. What we got was about 9 hours of 70-mile-an-hour winds.
Wow.
And in our area, because it's an older, established suburb, it's 100-plus years old, all of the transmission lines, power transmission lines, are aerial. And that is just a recipe for disaster. So when we lost the power, I mean, we lost a lot of stuff. And what really sucked was the generator I didn't have enough fuel stored. I was screwed every which way from Sunday. So what I wound up having to do was, and this was actually pretty much a stroke of genius. I still pat myself in the back for this. I siphoned all of the gas out of our cars.
Why not?
The kids weren't driving, and I had never been taught this. I had never been told this, and I thought, I am a genius. Siphon the gas out of our two cars, which was, at the time, it was like, I think we had a Ford Explorer and we had a minivan.
Okay.
So those tanks were, I believe, 15 and 20 gallons. So I was able to get almost a week's worth of fuel for the generator out of the cars.
Okay.
To keep one refrigerator running. And even to make it to even lessen the load on the generator, what we did was in our garage, we had like a little dorm fridge.
Yeah, yeah.
So we took everything out of the main fridge in the house. And I didn't have a chest freezer at the time.
Uh-huh.
Now I have a chest freezer, so I have more robust plans. But we used the mini fridge in the garage, and we put everything into that because it required less energy. I wasn't trying to run a freezer because there's no way to turn off the freezer portion of a kitchen refrigerator.
Right.
So it's pulling more amperage, it's pulling more wattage, and it's making the generator burn through more gas. So by switching over to just the smaller dorm fridge, which had enough room for, eggs and milk and creamer and the cheese and breads and, whatever juices for the kids and stuff, we were able, and we didn't have to like throw food out if we were cooking on the Coleman stove or I was cooking over the fire. Anything that was left over, we could get. I had tons of Ziploc bags. So I was able to get everything into Ziploc bags. We get it in the little refrigerator. And, normally those little 1 gallon generators, they'll burn through that 1 gallon, that tank, twice a day.
Oh, okay.
In a 24-hour period, depending on the load. So what I had to do was find the lowest load possible, and that was the dorm fridge. So I burned through about 2.5 gallons a day. But I didn't have to leave it running all the time, because once you got it up to temperature, once you got the fridge to the right temperature, 34, 35, 36 degrees, the generator I didn't have to run the generator all the time. It would stay cool for a good couple hours, and then I would kick it back on and cool it back down. But once it got up to 40 degrees, you got to kick it back on and cool it back down, because then things start to spoil. So,
might I suggest the next time you siphon gas from the neighbors' vehicles?
Yeah, this is definitely an idea. Hey, their security lights won't go on, so
it's a survival situation.
Yeah. I like to think of it as cannibalizing.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. Now, you've written a series of books called Foreign and Domestic. What is the premise of the series?
So, Foreign and Domestic is the series, which I thought was an original series name until I found it on Amazon about 900 places. And I thought, oh, well, that's not very original. So, the series name is Foreign and Domestic. And what I tried to do was, there were all kinds of books in the post-apocalyptic dystopian genre. And
lots of them.
Yeah, and because of what I do as an analyst in the IT world, my world revolves around everything detail oriented. So what was frustrating to me was that the authors in the genre were not satisfying my need for, well, how did you get here? You know, what precipitated this?
Okay.
So it was always like, here's an event, this is what happened, and, you know, it takes up maybe the first chapter. There's confusion for 2 or 3 chapters when people try and figure out what's going on. And then the next 15 chapters is them trying to just deal with the aftermath and the understanding of, you know, it was an EMP, it was a financial collapse, it was a solar flare, it was a pandemic,
right.
It was whatever it was, yeah.
Right.
So because I knew so much about the food industry, supply chains, big ag, stuff like that, because I'm a bit of a research hound, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna crash this food chain. And so that's what book 1 is about, is me trying to come up with a logical means for that industry to fail, and what would it take. And basically I said, if GMO crops were tied to cancer, that would crash it, no problem. So that's what I went with. But I had to put in plausible deniability, you know, so I don't get sued for libel. You know, I don't want the friggin' woke mob coming after me and trying to cancel me and all that. So I did that, and I was getting pretty near the end, and I thought, you know, I could probably make a series out of this. So it kind of went back to, and I was like, well, I can't make a series out of, how many times can I crash one industry, right?
Right.
So I kind of wove in some other storylines which would allow me to move to a part 2 and a part 3. So in part 1, I crashed the food industry. Part 2, I crashed the financial industry, and then in part 3, I crashed the electrical grid. So we have a slow slough, a slow slump to kind of start off this series, and you kind of see where everything's set and what's going on in DC, what's going on in these big ag GMO type companies, and the kind of the collusion that's going on between those two entities. I kind of equated the GMO industry to the old tobacco industry,
okay,
where, you know, they knew tobacco and all of the things that they were putting in it. Tobacco not necessarily is all that harmful. It's the stuff they add into it that makes it 10 times worse. I mean, yeah, you'll still get problems from just having pure tobacco, but it's the additives and the things that they're putting into the leaf product that you're inhaling, cigars, cigarettes, chew, snuff, plugs, whatever you want to call it. But they knew for 30, 40 years that this was a problem. And it wasn't until science caught up and independent studies were done that they started getting hammered, and they had to put out PSAs, and they had to put warning labels on all their products, and, you know, you couldn't sell it within so many feet of a school and all of that. So I took kind of that historical reference that was attributed to the tobacco industry, and I applied it to the GMO industry. They knew, you know, fictionally, this is what I wrote, they knew that the GMOs, while in its infancy in terms of science, because it's only been around for 20 or 30 years, they knew that some of their products and the things that they were adding into the plant, into the seed, was causing problems with consumption with the humans. It was leading to your body really not knowing what to do with it, because it's basically a foreign entity. It's a foreign body entering your body, and it doesn't know what to do. So we have all these elevated white blood counts, and we start getting tumors and benign cysts, and, you know, we start getting rates of incidence going up for celiac and foodborne allergies and all these things. So I took all of that, and I was like, this is how I'm going to crash it. And you know, of course, you know, I'm the author, so of course it worked. You know,
of course,
of course, you know, and there's human elements in there. There's a guy, my protagonist, he's just trying to rebuild his life. His wife was just a mess. She was an addict, and she was a thief and a liar, and they were divorced, and I kill her off pretty creatively in the beginning of the book, and that kind of sends him down into a downward spiral, because he kind of receives this letter from the grave with her kind of owning up to it, as one of the steps in AA and Narcotics Anonymous. She's coming clean, right? And it just sends him over the edge. And so
does she vote Democratic?
She probably did.
Okay, just checking.
She probably did. I didn't go that far with her, but she probably did. So he winds up he's trying to rebuild his life, and other characters kind of start entering his life, and he's like, I got to pull it together, man. And so he winds up helping to bring down the GMO industry when a visitor from his farm shows up unexpectedly. So, but I started introducing these other little Iranian jihadists, the Esfahani brothers, and their goal is to kind of level the playing field. They want to see Americans out there throwing rocks at tanks, and not just them. So they purposefully bring down a U.S. military aircraft with a portable EMP weapon, which I had been reading about, and they don't really talk about it, but they've got some shipboard mounted stuff and pulse weapons, and all. I was like, all right, I'll take some creative license with this. I'll merge some of these technologies together, and some of it's right out of science fiction. Some of it's kind of like, oh, that could happen. I could see that, So I tried to keep it somewhat realistic, but so they kind of lead the charge into part two, because when the food industry crashes, a lot of our old colonial adversaries, England, for instance, they see us kind of on our knees, and we're weak, and so they decide it's a good time to get all of the countries together that own U.S. debt and say, pay me.
Interesting. Now that.
So that crashes the financial industry. They start bringing in UN troops because they're going to go seize all of the assets, physical assets out of the various mints and depositories. And then you've got these little jihadists running around with portable EMPs, having little terror attacks, and they're bringing down planes, they're stopping trains and subways and cars, and and so the British finally get them figured out and kind of bring them into the fold, and then the British turn them loose on the convoys that are evacuating all of the gold out of Denver, and they're trying to stash the gold in different places, and they just so happen to come really close to where my protagonist lives, and so they wind up heading there.
All right.
And but I don't talk much about it in part one or part two, but my antagonist, Esfahani, he's got a brother, and the brother's an engineer, and the brother has figured out a way to infiltrate one of our nuclear missile bases up in North Dakota, and so he basically hotwires some nukes.
How interesting is that?
And pops off a couple of these. So, part three, they have power probably for the first 5 chapters. And then the rest of the time, it's them trying to figure out how to survive. And how much was Josh prepared? Josh is the protagonist's name, Josh Simmons.
Okay.
How much was Josh and his family prepared, and what kind of resources did he squirrel away, and what attributes can these other characters bring? I wanted to try and bring in some reality and say, hey, look, if you're going to try and survive what would equate to a major disruption at that point, and you're a quality assurance tester, you're probably not getting in the gate. But if you were an analyst or a mathematician or a carpenter or a plumber or a doctor or a veterinarian, you know what? Your skills are needed. If you used to be a cop or you used to be in the military or, somebody that has an actionable skill set that would be applicable to a major disruption like an EMP, you're gonna be able to trade, to barter, maybe food and lodging for in exchange for your services in, say, security or in farming. If you used to be a gardener or a landscaper or whatever the case may be. So, but what's interesting is parts 4 and 5 take place 20 years after that EMP.
Okay.
And so I introduced basically a kind of a trinity of disaster. So the EMP goes off. It's the middle of winter. You pretty much got the great die-off. It's the first thing that happens. So anybody that's on the table being operated on, they're dead. Anybody that's dependent on a machine to live, dialysis, etc., you're dead. Anybody that had an older pacemaker that wasn't as insulated as the ones that are in today, you're dead. If you were on a plane, you're dead. Anybody that was insulin dependent, functioning member of society the day before, you're lasting as long as your insulin. It's going to be a slow, painful death, and it's going to suck.
Oh, yes, it will.
So I bumped off a good number of people within the first 3 or 4 months of the EMP, and then the people that had older cars, and I had to draw the line in the sand on what the impacts were going to be from an EMP. So all of the research that I read basically says is if you have a car that's just plugs and wires, you're good to go.
Right.
But if you have a car that has a computer, you're screwed.
You're screwed big time.
And if you have one of these new whiz-bang Teslas, well, now you got a $60,000 paperweight. So I thought, well, okay, there's enough people that are pissed off about a government that didn't listen when the scientists were telling them they needed to protect the grid, they needed to shield these devices from this type of attack.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they load up and they just drive to D.C. and they just decapitate the federal government. They're like, nope, every one of you senators and congressmen, you're coming with me. And, they're hanging people from the Capitol Dome. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, we don't know about all of this type of mishigas until part 4.
Okay.
Where I start telling people, hey, here's what happened in the ensuing 20 years. But I did throw an interesting wrinkle in there, at least I thought it was interesting, is that the governors from the lower 48, they basically just started establishing their own little fiefdoms on state borders. And, National Guard assets that were within the state boundaries, they were theirs. And the federal government can go pound sand because, the president's not in charge. There's no Congress to speak of. Half of them just got assassinated and the other half are hiding. So they set up their own little fiefdoms and they just started like regional clan wars between the states.
Huh.
As it started out as a bit of a civil war, but it devolved into little regional clan wars. And some of my main characters were present and helped end the last of the clan wars, but it came at a cost, mental, breakdowns, and so we parts 4 and 5. I get into the psychiatry of it all. Not in a dry way, but just kind of explaining how some of these choices that we have to make, that men and women in uniform have to make, who lives, who dies, do I take a life or not? These things that they affect them. So people coming home with PTSD and just from the things that they've seen and seeing their buddies wounded or killed and or they themselves being wounded. There's a toll. There's a price to be paid, and sometimes it's not always physical. So I wanted to address that as well.
Okay.
But parts 4 and 5, I published them at the same time. Because I was writing them in parallel. Actually, sort of. I didn't mean to do it that way. But what happened was, I started writing part 4, and I got into that, and then my mom passed away, and so I stopped. I got some writer's block. I had to just deal with that. And when I finally got back to working on the books, and I was just kind of like, oh, this is a good idea. I know this one really works, and you just kind of get in the flow of it. When I looked down, I was at like 600 pages, and I thought, oh, good Lord, I can't do that. This is not Harry Potter, So I was like, well, where's a good place, good clean break? Where can I snap this thing off? We're going to do 2 parts. So I found a good spot, and so that put part 4 at about 350 pages, and part 5 was already 250 pages into it, and I was like, well, I already know how I want to end this. So I just kept on going, and I made them both about 325, 350 pages. So
okay.
They're not short, but they're definitely action packed, and you definitely, the feedback that I've gotten is that you definitely get to the point where you're invested in the characters. And some people were pissed. They came up to me and they're like, I cannot believe that you did that. I can't believe you killed that guy, or you killed them. And I was like, well, they were kind of ancillary characters, and they weren't helping the storyline along. I just needed them to do something. And, so it was, sometimes people they get when they get invested. That's great for me. I love it.
Well, just so your listeners know,
verbally accosting me.
Hey, I'm going to tell you something. I was looking at your reviews on Amazon. 29 reviews, 4 out of 5 stars. So that tells you, like you're talking about, the people become emotionally invested in your characters. Yeah,
the main knocks that I got. I'm going to be honest with you. The main knock that I got when part 1 was initially published was, it took too long to deliver the hook.
Oh.
And so I was like, okay, all right, and you try not to get pissed about it, but you're kind of you're like, okay, let me look at that from their perspective, and then you reread it, and you're like, what do you mean? This is good stuff. It's got detail. It kind of tells you kind of where we are, how this whole thing precipitated, the whole bit, and then you're like, oh, those sons of bitches, man! I can't believe they did that. No wonder they got so, and then that's where the hook came in. You're like, oh, those little bastards, and so there was a scene in chapter 5 or chapter 6 that I pulled and I condensed, and I was like, okay, here's chapter 1, here's your hook, and that's present day, and then chapter 2 says 2 years earlier, and then it gives you the slow build, and so that kind of helps solve that problem.
Right. Okay.
Then after part 1 was published, I started talking to a publisher, because I was doing self-publishing. And the publisher was like, "Look, man, you need to do this. You need to clean this up. You need to do this. You need to do that." I was like, "Okay. I can do that. I can do that. I can do that." And when I went and did it, they were like, "Look, you got too many characters, man." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" They were like, "Well, we counted them up, and in one book you've got, X number of characters." I'm like, "Well, each one of them plays a role," and they're like, "Look, okay, so if you're going to have that many characters, you don't need to give them all full names, okay? Because if you introduce a character that's got a first name and a last name, the reader subconsciously thinks, oh, that's a new character. I got to keep track of that character, and you only used them for like 6 pages." And I'm like, "Well, everybody's got a full name. I don't understand."
No, I get it. No, I understand where you're coming from.
And they're like, "It's just a subconscious thing. You just do that." And I'm like, "Okay." And but the problem was, I had already almost finished part 2. So I'm making all these changes to part 1. The changes are being manifested into part 2. Readers are getting invested in the characters, and then I release part 2, and they're like, "Wait, you killed somebody. What the hell?" And so...
But that's life. That's life.
I got ripped for that, and I had to put like a statement on Amazon that says, "Hey, look, I know you guys are pissed. I know you're upset. This is what happened, and here's why it happened, and da 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 da." And then I was like, I can't do any more than that, so I just had to move on at that point. There was one lady. I don't want to say her name, but she left a review, and I did not appreciate what she had to say.
You know what?
And
everybody's a critic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shakespeare never would have read the second play if Amazon feedback was allowed. So this particular young lady, I guess I'll call her that, she put in a review, and I was like, "You know what, lady? Screw you." So I used her name as an anagram in part 4, and I made her an old madam in a whorehouse because she got syphilis and she couldn't push ass anymore. So they made her a madam to take charge of it. But then she started showing sores, and so that's kind of where we meet her as she comes in, and she gets into a coughing fit, and then she drops dead. I'm like, writer's block cured.
I got this one figured out.
And you know what, lady? I got something for you. So I have some fun with it. I did an interview with a guy named James Burnett, and he was on Survival Punk, I believe. And he was like, "Dude, do me a favor and write me into your books as a bad guy, as an antagonist." I was like, "Sure, I can do that." And before I knew it, he's the main antagonist in parts 4 and 5. And by the time part 4 is over, you wish that guy was dead. This guy does some despicable things, and you're like, "Oh my God, I cannot wait for this guy to die. Who's going to kill this guy?" And so, but I know I've been talking for a while, but I wanted you'll get a kick out of this, John.
Go ahead.
So the president that I introduce in parts 4 and 5 is a former gangbanger from the Bronx named Alejandro Calderon. Any guess who I based that on?
Alejandro Calderon. No.
Take those three things. Bronx, Alejandro Calderon.
The Bronx, what was it? De Blasio?
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh, the ass of Congress herself.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what, this ought to be fun. Oh. So I wrote in Killary. I call her Killary. Some people call her Pillary. I wrote her into the series. She gets shot by a firing squad, so that's fun.
Of course.
And so I wrote the Bronx lady herself into it and she gets knocked off pretty fabulously too. So it's Yeah, and
So
the funny thing
basically,
is,
anybody you don't like meets a demise in your book.
it just happens that
You
way.
need therapy.
I know. That's why I write books.
I love it.
My wife, she doesn't complain about it, because she's asleep. She's a school teacher. She teaches high school biology.
Oh,
But she's up every morning at 5 a.m. She's first class starts at 7:30. My oldest daughter, like when I started, my oldest daughter was in elementary school. She's a freshman in college this year. My youngest daughter is a junior in high school. And I mean, she's very social. She's always running around, and she's got competition dance classes, and she's just, the only time I know she's either come or gone is that she's left the front door open. So, yeah, my wife and I had gone to bed, and she had come home, and I got up at 6 the next morning. The front door is wide open.
oh, jeez.
I'm like, what happened here? I'm looking around. I'm making sure all the computers are still here. I'm making sure that I'm checking to see where any of my firearms are, and I'm like, well, okay, everything's still here. And then I go upstairs to check, maybe, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. I roused her out of bed, and she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, what time did you get home? She said, 11-ish, I guess. And I said, you left the front door open all night long. What? No, no, you didn't. No, you didn't.
What you mean? You're just making it up?
Yeah, yeah. This is the one thing that my daughter and I argue about. She takes AP classes. She's got a 4.2 GPA. She wants to be a pilot, and I can't get her to shut a frickin' door. That's my complaint. That's my issue.
You could have other issues. That one's not bad.
Yeah, I could have a whole slew of other problems, but nope. My issue with this one is she can't shut the front door. So, but to get back to what we were talking about before, sort of, was that when I was writing parts 4 and 5, all right, there's no big ag, there's no big pharma, there's no electricity. So things like an appendicitis will kill you.
Yep.
Tonsillitis, maybe not. Tetanus, step on a rusty nail while you're scavenging for food or lumber or firewood or whatever. That'll kill you. So I was trying to come up with creative ways to kill people without modern medicine, things that they wouldn't have thought would kill them that could.
Right.
But I was also trying to save people. And I was trying to figure out, I'm like, well, if modern medicine doesn't exist and I don't have electricity, so what did people do? So, I started looking at the turn of the 20th century.
Right.
We're coming out of the Civil War and Reconstruction. We're getting into robber barons. There's westward expansion, and how do these people stay alive? Well, and that's kind of where home remedies, poultices, salves, and tinctures came from.
Nice. Okay.
Because I was doing all this research, right? I had all these recipes people were throwing at me. I was finding stuff online, and I would ask them, "Hey, can I use this in a book?" And they're like, "Yeah, go ahead." And I was like, "Well, actually, okay, great. I'll put that. I'll reference it in the. I make mild passings at certain recipes or certain concoctions or whatever in the fictional series, but in the actual nonfiction book, it's 200 pages of recipes on how to do stuff, how to deal with bursitis or gout, or if you've got kidney stones, or all manner of other stuff, everything from infants to older people, and this is what people did without modern medicine. You got to know what kind of trees are around you, and you use certain types of bark, and you can do this, or if you have the right plants that are in a medicinal herb garden, you can make these concoctions. You can do these things that are going to address all kinds of stuff. And if you've got chamomile or catnip or borage or whatever it is, you can go your own soaps and dander shampoos. You can come up with a treatment for pink eye. It doesn't matter. It's literally it's pretty much 200 pages of how-tos and recipes, and there's a pretty robust index in the back. So if you're trying to think of an ailment that you might have, you go to the index and just look up anything, antiseptic, or you need aloe or something like that because you've got a sunburn, or how do I do this and how do I do this? What kind of stuff can I find that's a drawing salve to get some kind of splinter or like infection, or
right.
How many uses can a person have for fennel? Well, go look up fennel, and there's about 8 places where it's been referenced in different recipes. So
it can be done.
Yeah, and that's kind of where that all came from. But every time that I went to go talk to the people that would share a recipe with me, and I would say, hey, I'm putting together this book of recipes for these types of things, and I would like to give you credit, and they're like, nope, I don't want my name out there. I'm like, what do you mean? And then I remembered where I was. I'm on a forum in the prepping community, and anonymity is a great thing, and people guard it dearly. OPSEC, all of it. And the problem for me is I would love to do that, but I'm also an author, so I can't really.
No, you gave it up. You gave it up just
Yeah.
like I gave up mine when I started doing this show.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can do is be vague about where I live, but, the woke mob, I'm sure, could find me.
Yeah, they can all go to hell. All right. No, well, they can. Well, apparently you're going to bring the fictional series to life through the spoken word. Talk to me about that.
Okay, yeah. So Amazon partnered with or bought a company called ACX. It's basically a clearinghouse for voice talent. And one of the things the feedback I got was, look, man, I'm on the road all the time. I'm a realtor for Mossy Oak. So I'm in all kinds of weird rural places. And I mean, sometimes I don't even get radio reception. I don't have time to read a book, but I really like the book series, the concept, the things that you talked about. It would be great if you could put that in audio, because I could just pop that thing on a CD, or I could, I can listen to it on Audible or iTunes or whatever. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'll look into that. And I didn't really do much with it for a little bit. And then when I finally finished the book series, I was like, you know what? Let's find out about this. And so I put a little script out there and asked for author or narrators. They would take the script and they would basically read it, and I could judge and ask them to do different things with their voices. I could make requests and say, look, the narrator that I'm looking for needs to be able to speak with a general American accent, a Southern accent, a British accent, a Middle Eastern accent, and a Spanish and a French accent. Yeah, well, that kind of narrowed down the pool real quick.
Imagine.
So the one guy, Dan Carroll, he said he's up in Canada. He's got French, and one of his neighbors is from the Middle East, and so he's been coaching him with Middle Eastern accents. And he's like, yeah, I think I can pull it off. And let me take a crack at your script, and because the 5-page script that I gave him had a very international cast in there, so that allowed him to do the different voices, different accents, and things of that nature. I had a couple other people that tried it as well. One guy did it, and he wanted to put in sound effects and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's really not me. That's, if so-and-so, someone-so, an explosion happened, and in my script, all of a sudden now I'm hearing explosions when I get the file back. I'm like, what the hell? That's not what I want. This is not, and the only thing I could think was, the old radio shows.
Right.
And I didn't, that wasn't me. That wasn't what I really wanted. And So Dan Carroll, he put in a pretty quality narration. So he's done the first 3 parts, and ACX gives you a deal. You can either pay the narrator outright, or you can do a royalty share. And I was like, well, let's do a royalty share because let's see if I can do this for the least amount of money possible.
Right.
So he was willing to do a royalty share, and I greatly appreciate that. So parts 1 through 3 are out. There was a snafu of some kind with ACX. They really, something got screwed up with them, and they wound up holding part 3 for like 2 months, felt like anyway. But Dan's got some other work that he's got to do. So part 4 will get started in late March, early April, and should be available by summertime. Because it takes, you got to think, when the book comes out, it's anywhere from 10 to 14 hours of finished audio. So he's got to record every single chapter, and then I have to review every single chapter, and I'm feeding him, hey, you said this word wrong in French, or can we pronounce that a different way, or stupid things like up in Cleveland, we have the UN forces are going to land up in Cuyahoga.
Right.
And he pronounced it Cuyahoga or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, hey, it's Cuyahoga.
Hey.
Or, there's a
hey,
river
hoser.
that goes through. Yeah, take that, eh? There's a river that goes through a small town called, the town's name is Chillicothe.
Right.
And so I think he pronounced it Chillicothe, or Chillicothe, because it was like E on the end. And
right.
And the name of the river is Scioto. Scioto. And if you look at it, it looks like Scioto. And I was like, nope, it's Scioto. And he's like, oh, shit. All right, I knew that.
There you go.
So, that's the kind of review that we have to do. And then ACX has to, once all of the chapters are reviewed by me and approved, ACX goes through their own little checks, which takes about a month, and then the book comes out. So
okay.
That's why I think part 4 should be ready in the summer based on the timelines that I have. And then part 5, which would finish out the series, should be available at the end of the year, I'm hoping.
All right.
So, but they're at least 10 hours. I believe part 3 was closer to 12 hours. But it's a lot of fun. It's interesting to hear your work kind of come to life,
Right.
So I don't know. I always pictured, if there ever was a major disruption like an EMP, that's why when you mentioned libraries earlier, resources and stuff like that. On my website, I have kind of a submenu under the main resources tab, and it's called Useful Resources Books, Useful Resources -books, and I have Useful Resources websites. And basically, what I did was when I originally started writing books, was I would put these useful resources sections in the back of the book, and it would kind of tell you where I was pulling this information from, whether it was a website or a book or whatever. And so I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore because it's obvious people aren't reading them based on some of the feedback I'm getting. So I put them all on my website. But one of the things that I like to tell people, well, if they're going to start getting into preparedness, 1 is start small, and 2 going to acquire the skill sets that you need, or the gear, or any of it,
right,
overnight. If you're trying to outlast a major disruption, you're not going shopping in a day and going to be able to make it 3 years without electricity.
No, you will not.
All right, that's not happening. Yeah, but one of the things that we have here where I am, we have a winter. I've got 16 inches of snow on the ground right now, and we got a big ass storm coming with another 8 to 12 inches coming Monday night into Tuesday.
Right.
And I'm like, whatever, dude. But if you
Let
had
it
a major
go.
disruption, yeah, I can't do anything about it. So I'm like, whatever. I also maintain a healthy library of fiction, just stuff that people can read. Probably just narration around a fire, where somebody that has a decent voice that just read through some stuff, and I broke it up in fiction series and then just fiction in general, and like stupid things like Under the Tuscan Sun, The Postman, what was the one? It's one of my favorite ones. It's Peter Mailey wrote it. It's A Year in Provence.
Oh,
I always love those books, stuff that has a lot of detail about the scenery and things like that, because it just lets your imagination flow. And I think that would be a good way to kind of pass the evening hours in a major disruption. So I don't want people necessarily to limit their library to just self-help, medical books and poultices and
right.
herbal remedies and gardening or whatever. There's more to that. You can't constantly be in a state of alert. You have to have some downtime, or you'll just go crazy, and then they'll kick you out of the group, and then you'll have to survive in the woods by yourself.
All right. Before you go any further, you have to give out your website address.
Oh, yeah. I guess that would be helpful, wouldn't it?
It would be helpful for some, yeah.
It is very simple. It is DavidJKirshner.com.
DavidJKirshner.com.
All one word.
All one word, my friends. But you already know that, so I've got a smart audience. I've got a smart audience.
Well, I just want to make sure, because I'm detail oriented. J is an initial, not the word J.
Correct. You go to the head of the class.
And Kershner has no I's.
It's K-E-R.
It's K-E-R-S-H-N-E-R.
That's it.
Everybody wants to throw a C in between the S and H.
Oh.
And everybody wants to send an I in there.
Well, yeah. They're thinking of Don Kershner from, Midnight? What was the name of that show?
I get asked that question a lot, and I'm like, I don't know who that dude is. There's an Irving Kershner as well, who was pretty famous in the movies. He did something with the movies. There's actually a radio host, Don Kershner's.
What the hell was the name of that tape? Yeah, I know you're talking. It's the same guy.
Rock concert.
Don Kershner's
rock concert.
Yeah, that's what. Then it became something else. It was on. It usually came on right after Saturday Night Live. I can't remember the name of it now.
Yeah, he spells his with an I.
Right.
Mine's an E.
Right, and that's why people. Yeah.
Let's see.
What else do you want to talk about, my friend?
Well, Trump just got acquitted again. How about that?
Oh, he's gonna. Did they vote already?
Yeah, he got acquitted.
Oh, too bad. This is gonna back. The Dems are gonna overreach. They're gonna hugely overreach on this thing, and they already have. And I'm sure the mainstream media is beside themselves, waiting for the talking points to be sent out from the Democratic Party.
Well, it doesn't help your cause when you purposefully go out and selectively edit and parse words,
right,
to make a case. If you don't take the full statement, then all you're doing is lying. I think everybody's lying, John. Every single one of them. They're all freaking lying. The left and the right. It just boggles the mind. Right? You see video of people pulling trunks of ballots out.
Right.
Well, why is that? I don't understand. If that is a true factual video, Why are those votes being counted? Where's and then you read, well, the state courts didn't want to touch anything dealing with federal elections. So they punted on all of them. Every single state that had one. They all punted. Nobody made a decision except for a rare few things that were technical within the law. Every single thing got kicked to the SCOTUS.
They want you to believe that that's normal, that you didn't see what you saw. That's what they want.
That's what that drives me crazy is, you see the video, you see or you hear the audio tape.
Right.
And you're like, wait a minute. If that is true, where's the corresponding court case? Where's the ruling? Why are these still? Here's the thing I don't get. And just I literally had to stop watching the news, man.
Me too.
Because it got me so fired up. Here's the thing I don't get. You take a bumbling idiot who you don't want to leave alone with your own children.
Right.
He's the weird-ass uncle that shows up at the barbecue and leers at the children, and you don't want him anywhere near him. And he showed up with a date, Comrade Kamala, and you don't want to leave them alone with any children. How does that pairing garner more votes than the most popular president in my lifetime?
It did. It didn't. They didn't. They did not.
He got more votes than Obama. How?
But you know what? This is the truth of the matter. And you're right.
That's the kind of shit that makes my head spin. I'm just like, what?
No, and it should. You saw what you saw. And they don't want you to believe what you saw. That it's all normal. That this is normal.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
That's about it. Now, you're going to tell me some bumbling idiot who's got dementia to the max sat in his basement the entire time and got 80 million votes? No, he did not. Not a chance on God's green earth did he ever. The question is, who's pulling his strings now? I prefer to believe what Rick Grinnell said. I like Rick Grinnell. I really do. And he said his assessment was that Susan Rice is pulling the strings right now. So we have essentially Obama 3.0.
Susan Rice, huh? That's interesting.
Check out Rick Grinnell. He used to be the Intel guy, Intel chief.
No, I liked him. He seemed to be a straight shooter.
Exactly.
Who was the one that Roseanne Barr made fun of, and then the woke mob came after her?
Oh, that was Valerie Jarrett.
Valerie Jarrett. That's who. I don't know.
She's around. Make no mistake. She has her input.
And then the New York Times puts out an article, they put out something, and said, well, yeah, there is a cabal. They did get together, but they did it for your own good.
Oh, and thank you, comrades. Thank you. I'm so grateful.
Did you see that?
That was on Time magazine.
Time. Thank you, Time. Okay, I thought it was for Time.
What's
I knew
the
there
difference?
Was a Time in there somewhere. Yeah, well, they're all kind of one and the same at that point. But I'm like, wait a minute. Wait. Back up. So a liberal magazine just admitted that the left colluded together, whether it was social media companies, whether it was software companies, whether it was manufacturing, anybody that had a left-leaning bent. They all partnered together. They all pooled their money. And the election, maybe it was legitimate, maybe not, but we're not going to say. But we did it for your good because Orange Man bad.
I need you to get on mumblet.com. You will love it. It's a true free speech platform, by the way. And you can do more on Mumblet than you can ever do on Facebook. I left Facebook. I left Twitter. So
spell it MUM.
All right. You'll find a lot of patriots there, and they will buy your book, I do believe. And
I have to tight. It's a tight. It's a. I don't know. It's tightrope. It's a fine line because sometimes you go into those places and you're like, hey, look, yeah, I got this opinion, I got that opinion. I got a million opinions, John. I
We all
mean,
do.
everybody's got them, right?
We all do.
But, hey, I got this opinion. And, oh, by the way, if you happen to agree with me, all of my books are for sale on Amazon.com.
Well, when you
So
create...
it's a fine line.
Well, when you go to Mumblet, just put in, you're a published author, these are the book series, and leave it at that. Let people figure out themselves. They will. They'll figure it out.
So I got a good story for you. So
Give me a story.
We're going out to dinner with some neighbors of ours, and they're good, fine, upstanding Christian people. We call them our meek people. And it came from a sermon from the church that we went to, and we were walking out of the church together, and I was like, you guys are our meek people. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? No. And they were very humble, very demure. No, you're our meek people. You should see us in private. We're like, nope, you're our meek people. We don't care what you say. And she, the wife, was a member of a Facebook discussion forum.
Yeah.
Apparently, at some point in the lead up to the election, somebody got into the group and started espousing hate and extremist views. Well, somebody notified their woke friends who got into the group somehow for the sole purpose of documenting everything. Screenshot, all the whole thing that went back for as far back as the forum existed. And they screenshot everything. And then they went in and selectively reviewed every single post and every single comment on every single topic. And then they unleashed the woke mob on anybody that they felt crossed the line. So this sweet little lady that lives across the street is contemplating moving just to get away from them. We went out to dinner with them before Christmas, and they told us about what was going on, and because she looked very gaunt, sunken eyes, very tired,
right?
Very
She's
thin.
Exhausted.
And I was like, "Are you okay? What is going on?" And she lit. I mean, we were at dinner in a restaurant, broke down, just crying, weeping. And they told us what happened, and they were like, "Well, what do you think we should do?" And I looked at her, and I was like, nothing. Don't do a damn thing. And she was like, what? But I need to put a statement, or I need to apologize. And I was like, don't you ever.
Don't you ever.
Because it doesn't matter what you say, how you say it, or how many times you say it.
Right.
The mob will never be satiated.
Right.
They'll never, ever, ever let it go. Even when something else comes along, shiny, to distract them, they still won't let it go. They'll just put it on the back burner until the shiny thing fades, and then they're going to come back to you.
Right.
And she's like, no, and okay, thank you, and I appreciate your, and I was like, okay, I'm telling you, don't do it.
Don't do it. Excellent advice.
She did. And she did. And, she tried reaching out to the people that had contacted her to say how hurt they were or disappointed or angry or embarrassed or whatever. And she tried to reach out to these people individually and explain, what she did? That was her first offense. It was a Peanuts cartoon that had Pigpen in it.
Okay.
And it was somebody had politicized the Peanuts cartoon, which was total crap. But they made it about the woke BLM crap.
Oh.
And she, a very popular college football team plays nearby.
Yeah.
And they had taken a picture. Somebody had taken a picture of the back of the helmets. And I forget what the word was that was on the helmets. And her comment was, I don't know why they just didn't put BLM on the helmet. It means the same thing. And the mob went crazy. They just lost it. And now she's just like, I can't, I'm off all social media. I'm off this, I'm off that. And she's just the nicest, sweetest little lady ever.
That's why,
and the mob has gone after her. And I'm just like,
but
nope.
that's why social media is the toilet of the internet. You have to find the correct platform that will let you speak what you want to speak. If you run across somebody you don't like, you go ahead and you block them yourself. You have your own community standards. Enforce your own community standards. Don't rely on the platform to do it for you, because that's what you end up with.
Exactly. And they didn't, and now they're kind of reaping the whirlwind of that decision. So, but this guy, oh my God, he's a neighbor of ours, lives up the street, and he's one of the leaders of the woke mob. But he's refrained from going after her because lives on the same street, same neighbor. And I'm not in this group because I have a hard time not saying something. So I do my level best to try and avoid it because, up until this last 2 years, I actually thought, I get these kids off to college and I might start looking at going into politics and doing some public life stuff and doing some public service. And I take a look at the last 2 years. I'm like, nope, not touching it. You can't pay me enough to deal with these psychotic loons.
Because,
but anyway,
let's be honest. The politicians are the slimiest of God's creatures.
Yeah, but there's got to be a way for somebody who comes from a normal walk of life to be able to go in the way that the founders expected it to work. You would go in, you would do your public service, 2 years in the House or 6 years in the Senate, and then you would go back to work doing whatever it was you did before. You didn't make that a career, and that is where it went wrong. I mean, Ted Cruz is out there trying to get a bill passed to institute term limits.
Right.
I applaud him.
So do I.
Go. Keep on going. And it's never going to go anywhere because those people will never vote themselves out of office.
What I like about...
And then you've got...
Cruz clerked for Scalia.
Yep.
And Cruz is not stupid by any stretch of the imagination.
Scalia did not hire stupid people.
No, he did not.
The thing that drives me crazy, right? So you got the Constitution of States running around. It's a good organization with a good purpose, and Utah voted a convention of the states. I'm sorry, did I say Constitution? I meant Convention of the States.
I know.
Utah voted Convention of the States out of committee, so it's going to the floor to, and that'll be, if they vote for it, that'll be 14 states that are on board for a Convention of the States. Wow. But I believe the Constitution says you got to have 42 or 46.
Yeah.
So they got a long way to go.
Well,
my fear is that if the Convention of the States actually happens, it potentially could go really bad for people that call themselves patriots, that enjoy freedom of speech, that enjoy the Second Amendment.
It could.
That enjoy their voting rights. I just have the thing that really scares me is that we get all this, the Convention of States, we get momentum, and they go and they say, yeah, you know what, Congress, pound sand. We're going to take care of it ourselves. It's in the Constitution. We can do this, and you can't stop it from happening. But it happens when the left is in full control.
Well, you know what they say. The devil you know versus the devil you don't.
Yeah, true.
And that's the risk. Yes, free speech is risky. You have the right to free speech, but you don't have the right to be free of the consequences of free speech.
Yeah, and that's where I think a lot of millennials get hung up.
Oh, they do.
They want to go out there and they want to spout all kinds of crap, and they want to say, well, no, you can't call me male or female. I'm binary. My pronouns are they and them, and all kinds of, what the hell? What are you talking about? And then they get all upset when they go, hey, look, here's how this really works, and here's your prize. Here's your lawsuit.
Here's your sign.
Yeah, here's your sign. Exactly. I love Bill Engvall. That guy's hysterical. But when the consequences come around, and they don't like that, we had a 4-year temper tantrum.
Oh yeah.
Because they didn't like something. 4 years. And then, on top of that, you had members of Congress running around for 4 years inciting insurrection and violence.
Right.
Active members of Congress in the House and the Senate with their own unparsed, unedited words inciting insurrection. But yet, they're going to try and vilify a guy who said, do it peacefully. Well, we'll just cut that last part out.
Right.
What? What the hell?
Here, let's really get crazy.
I can't watch the news anymore, John.
Let's really get crazy. I want to know why the officer or agent who shot Ashley Babbitt has yet to be named.
Or charged.
Or anything. You know, I hope her husband takes them to the cleaners and then some.
Yeah, I really do.
You shot an unarmed
did you see,
woman?
Shot an unarmed woman, yeah. Did you see that the Capitol police officer that died?
Yeah.
Did not die of blunt force trauma. He was never hit by the fire extinguisher.
Right.
Well, what the hell did he die from?
I heard.
They didn't say.
I heard the recent, as like I think 2 days ago,
It's
starting to leak out. He had some kind of a reaction to bear spray that was being used.
Really?
But that was 2 days ago. I don't know. And the government doesn't want you to know.
No.
They want you to believe in quote unquote insurrectionists, insurgents. Well, okay. So you can firebomb the federal courthouse in Portland and Seattle. That's okay. That's not insurrectionist or insurgency.
You can take over city blocks and declare your own autonomous zone, but that's not an insurrection.
You know, some months ago, when in fact I think it was in August or September, I posed the question, and it was really about what was going on in Portland and Seattle. And I said, at what point do you cross the line from protest to outright rebellion or insurrection? Never got an answer. And to this day, I don't even have an answer for that.
I got an answer for it. It's when it goes from peaceful to violent. The minute you break out a single can of paint and you start defacing public property, the minute you pick up a rock and hurl it at an ATM or a Starbucks window or anything, the minute you flip over a park bench, you went from protest to riot. Because usually the word protest starts with the word peaceful.
I understand you got boneheads out there that will flip the park bench and break windows. I'm talking that the step beyond a riot. I mean, they attacked a branch of the federal government, the federal courthouse.
They have not drawn that line in the sand, John, and they don't want to, because then they got to start locking people up.
Well,
but the law says they broke the law. They broke a federal law, and they should be put in federal prison.
I think Leavenworth would be a better place for them. They can make
big rocks into little rocks.
You got that right, 110%. Start working. We need gravel.
Oh, what would be even better is you'd say, hey, warehouser, you got some trees you want cut and delimbed and hauled out of the woods? There you go. Here's a whole work crew for you.
That's right. I've got no problem with that. I have a problem when one political party decides it's okay to firebomb courthouses. Look, I don't always agree with the judiciary because I believe we have a two-tiered justice system in this country.
How can you not?
Well, there are people out there that will swear up and down, and it's like, no, that's just not reality.
If there wasn't a two-tiered justice system, and Hillary Clinton would be in jail.
Should have been. Should have been. Instead, we listened to her whine. God, for 4 years, we had to listen to her whine about how she lost to Trump. You know what?
And go for her walks in the woods and have her Chardonnay.
I wish a bear would have eaten her. I'm sure
Secret
Bill would have
Service
thought
would have
so
shot
too.
the bear.
I'm sure Bill would have enjoyed that. No, let the bear go.
I'm on my way to McDonald's.
McDonald's. I gotta go to Hooters. Come on, Al. We're gonna go to Hooters.
I gotta buy one get one free coupon.
Don't worry about it. Hillary's eaten by a bear.
Yeah. Oh my God. They're just. Yeah.
I know. I want you on Mumble It. And you know what? I want you to consider something here, my friend.
Yep.
Consider this, if you would. Consider doing a weekly show here on CRN. I think you've got a lot to offer. Not just being a published author, but you're well-spoken. You know how to speak. I think you should consider it. Just doing a podcast.
Do you remember when they said Obama was well-spoken and it was taken as a racist insult?
Well, that's because it was proven he needed a teleprompter. You take that teleprompter away, he sounds like Joe Biden. You do. He goes, and he stumbles on his words and all that. Oh, by the way, it was Don Kershner's Midnight Special.
Oh, okay.
I just remembered it. It's Don Kershner's Midnight Special. Our guest tonight is the Doobie Brothers.
Followed shortly by Willie Nelson.
Right. Absolutely. But I think you should consider doing a podcast here on Contra Radio Network. I really do.
That's definitely an idea.
You know, and then you can say whatever you want. If you want to hawk your books all the time, I'll tell you what I'll do, my friend. You cut me a commercial, 30 seconds. I will play it on my show, and I will put it on CRN for the other host as well.
I don't even know how to do that, but I'm going to look into it, John.
You do too. Don't say you don't know. Hell, man, you're halfway there. All you got to do is record it. Record it, and I'll tell you what. You record what you want to say. I'll send it to my producer, Don Lowry. Don will add some music to the background, and ta-da, you got an ad.
Oh, there you go. I took the note, John. Now I got to follow through on it.
Oh, well
I got Mumble It, CRN show, and 30-second commercial.
That's my gift to you for coming on my show. I appreciate it so much.
Well, you're welcome. You know what?
What?
I need to tell you, I'd never told you about what is in Preparing to Prepare.
Oh, well, tell me. Tell us.
Preparing to Prepare is for people that are getting started or maybe have lost their way and they're kind of floundering a little bit.
We all do. We all got there.
It takes a duration-based approach to preparedness.
Right.
So I define it as minor, moderate, and major. A minor is a week or less. A moderate is a week to a month. And a major is a month or longer. And what I do is I walk you through the things that you could do that would help you outlast a minor or a moderate. And then I point out things that will help you survive as best you can in a major disruption.
Okay.
So it's things from, you know what, get a couple extra 5-gallon containers and fill them with fuel and put stable in it. I know the hard way. That's what I should have been doing to outlast that Derico.
Right.
And I put a lot of examples in there that actually help, or I drew comparisons to, because I had friends of mine that were down in the Southeast, and they got hit by 3 hurricanes in a row in late 2017.
Right.
And it dumped over 2 feet of rainwater down there. Well, all the hardwood trees were coming down left and right. Pine trees stood, but the hardwoods fell, and they were trapped in their house at their farm for 3 weeks because they had to cut all of the lumber to get out. The fields were too soggy to drive through. Tractors were stuck in the pasture. They couldn't get anything out. So they had to literally just work their way down the driveway and cut down tree after tree after tree after tree that had to block the driveway so that they could get out.
Having a chainsaw would be helpful.
Well, yeah, no, they had a chainsaw and they had neighbor kids coming over whacking on. I mean, I'm talking hardwood trees that were easily 3 feet in diameter. I mean, these were big trees.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember when they were there, and they were 2 feet in diameter when I was a kid growing up there. I mean, these things were freaking enormous. And I put all kinds of examples and stuff like that to say, hey, look, this was just they were so far inland, they didn't get the quote unquote hurricane, but they got all the rain and they got moderate winds. But this is how some weather event could become a moderate disruption, because it's more than a week.
Right.
So now what are you going to do? And so I stepped through all kinds of stuff like that. So anyway, I wanted to put that in there since we talked about all the other books.
Okay. That reminds me. What format do your books come in?
They are available in Kindle and in paperback.
Okay, Kindle, that's what I want to know. It's important. I like the Kindles, by the way. All my books.
I don't want to say Kindle. It's electronic. You can, I guess Kindle is that the Amazon brand?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But the books I have actual books I have for my resource library, but for my everyday reading or just putzing around, Kindle all the way.
Yeah. Well, you got maybe your producer can print the copies that I sent to you electronically.
I wouldn't do that. Don, I swear.
Give him something to do in the evening hours. Hey, Don, print these books, put 3-ring hole in there, and get them bound up for me, or do a comb bind.
Don is one of those guys that if you ask him, he's always doing something. But amazingly enough, whenever I want to get a hold of him, it's right away. It's like, what are you doing? And it's something innocuous, like I'm cooking on the grill. Okay, so what? Answer my damn text when I get a hold of you.
Yeah. But just to prove that people that have been doing this a while, we still make stupid mistakes.
Oh yeah.
To give you an example of that, I was working on my NRA certification so I could be a firearms instructor. You'd be amazed at the number of soccer moms that want to conceal carry.
Oh, you know what? That's the fastest growing segment of the market.
Well, no, this was before all of the craziness. This was like we would go to, big dinner parties or big birthday parties and stuff. And they know that I've written books and the genre that they're in. They know that I'm outdoorsy and that I'm an avid hunter and I enjoy the woods and being out and about and doing stuff like that. And I have had at least a dozen, maybe more, people that I know that say, hey, do you do concealed carry classes? And my honest answer is I'm working on it. But because of COVID, everything got shut down. We can't go to the range. We can't do the classroom time or any of that stuff. And every single one of them has said, hey, when you get your certification and you can teach classes, I would like to get my concealed carry license. And my first question to them usually is, I don't ever ask why. It's none of my business why. I always ask, does your husband want to come along as well? And she said, no. Most of the time, the wife will say, no, this is just something that I want to do for me. He travels a lot. A lot of them are the husbands travel a lot. So I'm working on my NRA certification so I can be a certified instructor for concealed carry.
Good.
I started digging around and trying to get an FFL license so that I could be a waypoint for people that want to have transfers between states for people that are in my area. Right. Not to get rich, not to charge them an arm and a leg. I mean, it's like $20.
Right.
Here, you pay me $20, we'll run the background check. 4473.
I think that's what it is. That sounds right.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's so many freaking federal forms. I just started doing my taxes. I'm like,
don't get me started on taxes. I'll go nuts.
Oh, here, not to get you started, but I know my wife is looking at me like, we have a dinner date. I'm like, oh yeah, I know. So I started doing my taxes. So this is the fun part. Okay, so I have a W-2 from my 9-to-5 employer. I have a 1099 from Amazon for the book royalties. I have a business in the home, so I get to write off a percentage of my utilities, my square footage, or not my based on the square footage. I get to write off a percentage of my utilities, my mortgage interest, my real estate taxes, and some other things. I have a TD Ameritrade account. I have a company-sponsored 401k, and I have charitable contributions in cash and kind. So when I'm all done with the taxes, my wife and I cannot file separately because there's too much money at stake.
Right.
Or I'm sorry, we cannot file jointly because there's too much money at stake.
Right.
We change tax brackets and then we get penalized for it. So we have to do married filing separately. But when you do married filing separately, we now can't write off our daughter's college. We can't put in her 1098T or whatever the hell it is for her tuition for a very expensive private school in Ohio.
Yeah.
And we can't do anything about it. And because we make too much money and we can't file jointly, even if we did file jointly, we couldn't write it off then because then we make too much money.
Right. You're screwed.
I get screwed left and right.
And they keep doing it, and they don't understand. You know, Washington, D.C. doesn't give a crap. They're under the impression that we work for them.
Oh, that drives me bonkers.
Oh, it's enough to put me over the edge. I stopped watching the news because I was yelling at the TV, and it was driving my wife crazy. Melissa's going nuts. She says, "Stop yelling at the TV. They can't hear you." I said, "No, but if they could."
You know what? When I saw what happened election night and the day after the election, when I woke up the next morning and Biden suddenly had a $300,000 vote or 300,000 votes show up in the middle of the night, I was like, "That's it. The fix is in."
Yep.
Click, and I turned it off.
Yep.
And I just fumed. I was just stomping around the house. Trish was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "They fixed it. They totally." And she was like, "Oh no, they didn't." And every time a piece of evidence came out, I was like, "Here, watch this." And I would just hand her my phone. I didn't tell her anything. I wouldn't voice an opinion or insert commentary. I literally would just hold my phone up and let her watch the video. And she would say, well, what are they doing? And I said, "They're pulling trunks of ballots out from underneath the tablecloth because the sheriff showed up and removed all of the Republican poll watchers, and so now they can go count all of the prefabbed ballots."
Right.
That's not what they're doing. And I said, "Honey, watch the video again." And actually what I did was I backed out of the video and I said, "Here's the article, here's the video." No. And I'm like, "Yeah, pay no attention to the guy behind the curtain." So I just got so pissed off.
You mean, yeah.
My oldest daughter, she's right leaning. She's center right.
Right.
She's a college student, so I imagine there'll be a few years where she'll be leaning left, but she'll come back to the fold, I swear. The youngest one, I don't know where I went wrong with her. She's just she's just off. She's in left field, and there's nothing I can do about it.
She's still a kid.
She likes to.
She'll grow up.
Yeah. She'll get it figured out once she starts having to pay taxes
in the real world.
She understands FICA and all that fun shit. And but she likes to needle me, and she's like, "Oh, did you see what Trump did today? Oh, did you see this? Oh, did you see that?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
I've heard,
doctored videos. Come here. So it just it drives me crazy. So but the funny thing was that when she started looking at some of these things, and she was like, "Oh my God, and now I didn't do anything." She is a she's a research hound.
Oh, is she?
She's coming closer and closer and closer to the center because she's finding out more and more things. I'm like, I told you, but I don't want to say anything. But they've told me that my daughters they wanted me to get on Instagram.
Oh no.
And yeah, so I was like, well, this was before I went on my own because of COVID. My wife and daughters went on vacation without me, and I couldn't go because of work. And then I went later on. But we both went to the same place. We both went to Sedona. Our family has a house out there that we did not buy. It was kind of an inherited deal. And they were like, you get on Instagram and you can share the really cool pictures from Sedona. And I was like, oh, all right. And as I'm about to get in the car to go to get to the airport to get on the plane, Kate pulls me aside. She goes, Dad, you cannot put anything political on Instagram, okay? It's just about pictures and fun places and stuff, okay? I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, all right.
So every single one of my pictures has either been some kind of artsy deal or it's been food that I cooked. So
something
my
innocuous.
Daughters now, so now my daughters are bitching at me because I keep posting pictures of food. And they're like, Dad, stop. That's not I'm like, hey, you told me nothing political.
Right.
I'm like, all right, fine. So, oh, man. All right. I will call you back.
I'll email you my phone number.
Yeah, because I want to talk to you some more about the show and a commercial spot or whatever.
Yeah, we could do that.
My wife is literally in the driveway, in the car, with the neighbors.
Go.
And
be gone with you.
She's honking. She just honked her horn at me. All right.
Be gone.
Hey,
Thanks.
man, it was great talking to you again.
Dave, it's always a lot of fun with you. We'll talk again when you get a chance. All right?
I enjoyed it, John.
Hey, thanks again, Dave. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
All right, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, all right, my friends. That was David Kershner. Had him on Skype. We were doing this. Hope you enjoyed the interview. This is the longest show I've done in 2 years, maybe 3. See, when I first started doing this show, it was just Contra Radio Network, and we were on Blog Talk Radio, and a 2-hour show was normal. Usually did it from like 8 to 10 and all that. Well, not any, and then it's like, you know what, let's cut it down, because a lot of people listen to the show when they're in their car and whatnot. It takes a half hour, 45 minutes for them to get to work, so I cut down my time on it. But this time, because we have this guest, David Kershner, by the way, go to his website, davidjkershner.com. Learn a little bit more about the guy. I think you'll like him. And check out his books on Amazon.com. They're on Kindle and paperback. I think you'll enjoy it. You heard some backs about why he wrote what he did, how he wrote it, how he came up with the idea. I hope you enjoyed this interview. I've got a tip for you on a new search engine that was just sent over to me. Hold on. You know what? I don't want to do it any longer. I'm going to save it for my next episode coming up in a few days because it's a new week. So with that said, by all means, stick around. Come back again next week. I'll have this new search engine. And when I say new, it's something interesting. I think you preppers and patriots will really like, especially those of you that like to keep your, the anonymous thing going. So until then, I'm John Jeffers here at the Jeffers Brief. Hope you enjoyed the interview with David Kershner, author of several books. In fact, I was looking at the list. I'm going to get a few of his books, especially, which one was it that I want to get for sure? The book I want to definitely look at and grabbing, and it's going to be the paperback because it's going to go in the resource library. It is the, Poultices, Salves, and Tinctures. That's the book I'm going to grab. It's a recipe book. Not for food, but for medical purposes. Obviously, to be used when the grid goes down and you have nothing else left. So, ideas. Think about it. Until then, I'm John Jeffers here at the Contra Radio Network here on the Jeffers Brief. Be safe, be alert, be vigilant. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for listening.